gives you an idea how big stuff is in Warhammer. This is big enough to be almost a city.
They are considered small.
That's one of the smaller ships? Okay. That's as big as a country. Don't care about how many people are in this. And I love how they're like, this is an escort. The hell does this thing need an escort for? Wait, Tyranid hive ships have been known to munch ships like that whole wrong-sized shit. How'd they find my shit? Chat loves their 40K. Oh, there we go.
This is an Imperial warship. The one true means of ensuring the Emperor's gaze watches over all the stars of the galaxy. In the void, its scale can be difficult to grasp. Thus, we can place it beside an aircraft carrier from ancient Terra. From tip to tail, it stretches over multiple kilometers with hundreds of megatons worth of men, materials, and weaponry.
That gives you an idea how big stuff is in Warhammer. I already had that kind of feeling that the aircraft was huge, but this basically is like, oh yeah, by the way, these are considered city level. What do you think that's considered? This is big enough to be almost a city. Just this at the top, right here, is the command post. Just that little, just this thing right here is almost as big as this. Imagine how many people are in that.
Being propelled through space.
That's one of the smaller ships?
By reactors large enough to power entire hive cities. But this particular vessel is just an escort. Close behind come the larger boats of the fleet. Destroyers, frigates, cruisers, grand cruisers, battleships, and other capital ships represent the true spectrum of assets available to the Navis Imperialis. These are not just the...
That thing is a country. That thing right there is a country. This thing right here, that's as big as a country. Almost bigger. This thing right here, that's like a state. This is like 2 states. This, country.
The eyes of the Emperor's gaze, but the
don't care about how many people are in this. How the heck? How many people are in this?
swords of his galactic will.
And I love how they're like, this is an escort. The hell does this thing need an escort for?
As with all weapons of war, they can be grouped into classes based on size, role, and weapons profile. Thus understood, they can be properly employed for combat. Together, dozens of such ships may form a battle group to hold a subsector. Hundreds of ships form a battle fleet to hold a sector. And thousands of ships form the war fleets, which hold a segmentum. At such scales, it is tempting and often necessary to reduce these imperial assets to numbers on a grand strategy board.
Wait, Tyranid hive ships have been known to munch ships like that whole. Talk about snack run. Hello?
Indeed, a
You know how many calories that is, mister?
passionate, analytical
Just one human's like 20 million calories.
lens is often
That's
used
why I don't eat humans very much. God dang. All the flying I have to do to work that off?
useful when grappling with matters of construction, logistics, and operations from the desks of the High Admiralty. Even captains must consult the cold tabulations of their onboard power generators, weapons batteries, and life support systems. But one must not forget the individual humanity of the ships which defend mankind. After all, each is a world unto itself, with complex communities filling every niche of these pockets of habitable space within the vast, cold expanse of the void. From the upper echelons of the officer corps in the command bridge, to the most lowly of their crew in the bilges, and all in between. So today, let us seek to gain a full understanding of these complexities, both small and large, with the
Munch these things. Munch these things. Wait, wouldn't that make these things like toothpicks to it?
true size of the Imperial Navy.
So I'm very excited to show you guys this
Biggest
episode.
ship
It is
ever
going to
for
be an
now is
awesome
the
series.
Necron's
Now in
world
part
engine,
one, we'll be looking specifically
which
at
name
overall
implies
naval
it's
hierarchies,
effing
ship
big.
classifications, things like that.
Sounds like it.
Then in future episodes, we'll get into individual ships, what it's like to build them, and what life is like aboard such vessels. Now, if you want to get a head start on our series, what you can actually do is check out today's sponsor, Warhammer 40,000 Rogue Trader, which was actually the inspiration for embarking on this series in the first place because of just how well they brought these ships to life and how it made me want to bring it to a wider audience. It's a game I love for many reasons, but let's go ahead and explain it to the uninitiated. Rogue Trader at its core is a Warhammer-themed CRPG with tactical turn-based combat set on the frontiers of Imperial space. The basic idea is you're a privateer tasked with exploring, taming, and consolidating power on behalf of humanity in the
Moon-sized
wild
ships.
regions of the Coronis Expanse. There are tons of
All I know about the orcs is apparently some of them don't have windows on their ships. And the other orcs who pass them would be like, how can you breathe? You don't have windows. And the orcs start suffocating. Then, not before, then.
different planets and nooks and crannies to explore, and every decision you make has a deep impact on the narrative. Along the way, you collect allies and companions such as a Sister of Battle, an Eldari Ranger, and the newly added Arbites Companion, all of which benefit greatly from Alcat's long experience crafting deep RPG titles. You even get your own warship, which is hugely customizable and can take part in its own space battles. So like I said, I love the base game, it is fantastic, but don't trust me, take a look at these Steam reviews, which are overwhelmingly positive. That is awesome to see. Alcat Games is a trusted studio, which is a very rare thing nowadays.
Well, very
the first
positive.
DLC reviewed very
Not
well, and now
overly-
they're back with DLC
overwhelmingly.
number 2, Lex Imperialis, which continues the story with the introduction of the Adeptus Arbites. The DLC further enriches the game with a lot of
Being
add-ons,
in very
and can now
positive
even be
things,
played in
pretty
co-op
good.
mode for up to 6 people. I certainly can't recommend it enough. And with the Steam summer sale starting in just a few days, I certainly recommend that you check out Warhammer 40,000 Rogue Trader by clicking the link in the description below. Enjoy.
We can begin our discussion at the highest levels of Imperial administration. Here we see that all spacefaring vessels under Imperial control can be broadly grouped into the Imperial fleet, which is parented to the Adeptus Administratum. The fleet then breaks out into 3 major branches: the war fleets, the merchant fleets, and the civil fleets. Alongside them are smaller branches operated by the Space Marines, the Adeptus Mechanicus, and the Inquisition, to name just a few. Also worth mentioning is the Navis Nobilite, which
So this is basically how the fleets are, I guess. What's the word I'm looking for? I don't remember the word I'm looking for.
provides navigators to all of the aforementioned groups. For our purposes, we will be focused on the war fleets. Officially known as the Navis Imperialis, it is the branch of the armed forces responsible for maintaining and operating spacefaring warships. Its administrative headquarters is located on Terra. From here reign the Lord High Admirals of the Imperial Navy, who oversee the tens of thousands of ships and millions of sailors under their command. At this highest level, administration is split between 5 segmenti majoris, with command of segmentum solar being considered the most prestigious. Each segmentum has its own war fleet and fortress headquarters led by one of the Lord High Admirals. The total ship count within a segmentum numbers in the thousands. However, not all are on active duty. Many will be undergoing resupply, repair, or decommissioning, while entire reserve fleets may lay dormant, awaiting activation in the event of a major threat. Whatever the case, command of the ships within each segmentum is further broken out by sector. These are most usually cubes of space, roughly 200 light-years to a side. Each sector will have its own battle fleet led by a Lord Admiral. Typically, they will have at their disposal about 50 to 75 interstellar warships, though this can vary wildly. In addition, such battle fleets
That's a lot of ships. That's insane.
will have access to many local sub-light vessels, space stations, orbital defense platforms, mine arrays, communication systems, observation posts, and more.
And more?
The so-called Bastion fleets of the Cadia, Agrippina, Scarus, and Corona sectors in particular are some of the most extensive and best equipped of the galaxy, on account of their need to engage in near-perpetual warfare in some of the most hostile regions of Imperial space. Given that sectors can contain tens of thousands of star systems, it proves impractical to field consolidated battle fleets. Thus, further subdivisions can be made of such operational groups into more ad hoc, non-permanent formations, which are assembled and deployed on an as-needed basis.
Okay.
Major campaigns, for instance, will often see battle groups take the field in a formation tailored to the mission at hand. These will typically be led by High Admirals or Admirals who operate out of a designated flagship, usually the largest vessel, with the support of perhaps a dozen or more medium and small class ships.
I like how... Wait, if that's considered large, what about the ship that's bigger than that? What is that considered?
Smaller operations, meanwhile, will be undertaken by squadrons led by commodores or commodore captains. They typically consist of just a few light vessels for missions such as patrol, escort, and reconnaissance. And finally, at the very bottom of this hierarchy are the captains responsible for individual ships. Within each ship is its own realm of organizational hierarchies.
They're called ratings or ratings. Okay. Mostly because they can't make them anymore. Okay.
It's a topic well worth discussing, but for now, we shall move on. With this overview of the fleet's level hierarchy in mind, we can now finally explore the details of individual ships. To do so, for each ship type will be beyond the scope of this video. Therefore, we will once more have to speak in some generalities. For starters, we can get a sense of the internal layout of a typical ship. Cutting a section through one, we see that its design often includes the following: a propulsion section with plasma drives for sublight acceleration. A power and engineering section with plasma generators for primary power, warp drives to enable FTL travel, Geller field generators for protection whilst in the warp, and engineeriums to service the ship. A rear section with a command tower for control and navigation, mid-decks for major facilities like habitation, armories, and docks, and lower decks for storage and workshops. A midship corridor with infrastructure to host broadside batteries, defensive weaponry, sensor spines, and shield emitters. And a forward section with prow-mounted weapons, a ram, and emergency backup systems. Beyond these fundamentals, each particular ship class may make further adjustments to these basic sections to suit their desired role in battle. With this overall fleet hierarchy established and a generic...
My only question is, why would they put the backup power generators and shield generators in the front? Shouldn't you put those in the back? I don't know. Seems like a flaw to me.
We can now review the major classes of warships which make up the ranks of the Navis Imperialis. A disclaimer before we begin is that these will be broad generalizations. The Adeptus Mechanicus has attempted to regulate the classification of vessels based on operating characteristics and weapons configurations. To some extent, the use of STCs and manufacturing patterns has led to some repeatability, but uniformity is ultimately impossible across a galactic empire. With that being said, we can proceed with a generalized model. At the smallest end of the scale are the onboard attack craft, which we have shown as a useful unit for scale. They include
Remember, innovation is scarce. I'm just trying to help.
various types such as Fury interceptors, Starhawk bombers, and Shark assault boats.
I'm just a dragon with that's very intelligent. I'm sorry.
At roughly 50 to 60 meters in length, these vehicles would tower over most of
Maybe I just helped the salamanders.
terrestrial peers. However, amidst the oceanic scales of the void, they are but minnows in a sea of whales. This becomes
Heretical
clear
dragon.
with the introduction of our first type
You
of
don't know that.
Imperial ships, the escort class. These are enormous vessels, which stretch out over 1 to 2 kilometers. Weighing 5 to 10 megatons, their titanic structures hold crews in the tens of thousands, with enough power, armor, shielding, and weaponry to rival entire hive cities. In space, however, they are considered small. Yet, as a consequence of this fact, they also come in the greatest numbers. As such, they are often the most versatile, being used for the defense of larger ships as well as patrol, picketing, reconnaissance, convoy protection, and raiding. The escort class is broken out into multiple subclasses. This includes the sloops, raiders, corvettes, destroyers, and frigates, all of which have heavy and light variants. Many of the smaller crafts lack the FTL capabilities, armor, or weaponry to be of much relevance to naval warfare. In this respect, the first warship to consider is the corvette. It is the smallest of the warships, typically built in times of war with simple components and rugged designs, whose profile is best suited for the menial tasks of reconnaissance, mine laying, and escort duty, which free up its larger brethren for actual combat. The next escort subclass is the destroyer. These vessels have traded some of the speed of a corvette for more weapons and armor. To this end, they
And apparently parts of castles on the side of them.
Wagon.
typically sport prow torpedoes and a single set of weapon batteries. This makes them capable of technically fighting on their own. Given their size, though, this usually means individuals can hunt down smaller prey, but must use pack tactics and mass firepower to take on larger vessels. As a consequence, they usually keep a distance, using their long-range detection gear to spot targets, fire torpedoes, and skirmish from afar. Frigates, meanwhile, prove more capable of sustained combat on account of their larger size and more robust weapons batteries and point defense systems. The Sword-class frigate is among the most common in the Imperial fleet, with a robust design which has stood the test of time. Its laser-based weapons and reliable armor make it a classic escort vessel, and it is a well-understood fact in the Navy that no battleship should operate without at least a pair of swords to guard their back. The Firestorm-class frigate is another prominent variant, which iterates on the sword design by making use of a prow-mounted lance turret for heavy-hitting, armor-piercing fire. Other frigate versions exist, but shall have to be omitted in our review. Now, we can move on to the next tier of warship class, the cruiser. In contrast to the prior escorts, which operate in squadrons, the cruiser is intended for long-range, independent operation. Thus, an ideal cruiser has enough firepower to drive off opposing escorts while carrying enough fuel and supplies to remain away from bases for months at a time. In battle, light cruisers, such as the Dauntless class, usually feature prow lances and an array of flanking weapons batteries, while Endeavour and Endurance light cruisers feature prow torpedoes and heavy macro cannons. Standard cruisers increase their size and weapon systems to operate like more regular ships of the line. The common Lunar and Gothic class cruisers, for instance, boast powerful lance batteries on either flank. Tyrant-class cruisers, meanwhile, deploy superfire plasma weaponry for long-range fighting. Dominator-class cruisers use Nova cannons for extreme-range combat, and Dictator-class cruisers open expanded launch bays to unleash swarms of attack craft. As cruisers become more heavily armed, they are liable to become reclassified as battle cruisers. These ships boast formidable weaponry typically reserved for larger class warships. However, this added range and firepower comes at the cost of onboard space and energy, which reduces their efficacy for long-term operations. Moving on, we get to the highest tier of warship, the battleship class. These behemoths of the stars can be up to 8 kilometers in length, with crews numbering in the hundreds of thousands. Their incredible size means they boast the most formidable weaponry and robust shielding of any other ship in the fleet. However, on account of...
Yet all of them appear to have their shielding, their backup shielding and power in the nose of the craft that typically crashes into stuff. Okay.
Such advanced features, battleships take tremendous resources to construct, spending decades, if not centuries, in the largest shipyards of the Imperium before ever being deemed ready for combat. As a consequence, many of the Imperium's battleships are thousands of years old. In service, they are similarly slow to maneuver. Yet, once in position, the firepower they can unleash is unparalleled in its destruction. The Retribution class battleship, for instance, is a close-quarters brawler with rows upon rows of mighty weapons batteries lining its sides for devastating broadsides, capable of saturating the void with projectiles thick enough to walk upon. The Apocalypse-class battleship, meanwhile, prefers to tear apart enemy lines from a distance by pounding them to atoms with long-range, hard-hitting blows from its flanking arrays of lance batteries and Nova cannons. Truly, these sorts of battleships are the pride and jewels of the Imperial Navy. With only a handful being present within any given fleet, they often act as the flagship of such formations. But even larger warships lurk in the arsenal of the Navis Imperialis. The Gloriana-class battleship is one such example. Stretching out over 20 to 30 kilometers, it is the flagship of flagships, originally built during the Great Crusade for each of the Primarchs and their legions. In the 41st millennium, the roughly 20 surviving Gloriana battleships have since been divided between the successor chapters of the Space Marines, with but the Amphion remaining with Imperial naval forces as the linchpin of Battle Fleet Solar. The sheer power of such vessels is beyond comprehension and, in many ways, serves as the ultimate guarantor of Imperium's dominance of the stars. Beyond this, only the Phalanx Mobile Fortress Monastery or the lost flagships of the Emperor exceed their size. A deeper dive into such topics is certainly warranted, but we'll have to
How'd they find my shit?
wait for another time. In our next video, we shall examine how the warships of the fleet are built and operated. For now, you can catch script previews and download HD
That's pretty
versions
cool.
of our
I
art
like
on
some of those
Patreon
things.
and YouTube memberships. A big
That's
thanks to
very
the current
interesting to
supporters
learn.
and to the researchers,
I like
writers,
it.
and artists for making this episode possible. We couldn't have done it without this team and this community. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to like and subscribe for more content
Invicta.
and check out these other related videos. See you in the next one.
You guys, don't forget to give them a like and a view and like subscribe if you like them. Which I'm sure at least half of you are already subscribed. But yeah, that's actually super interesting. It was very interesting to learn.